I went to BITS at a very formative period of my life, as did all of you, right? And my dad in particular would have preferred that I went into medicine, had no interest in medicine whatsoever. You met very interesting people, even the people who ragged you. One of them who ragged me is a year senior to me, is one of my best friends in London.
Oh, wow.
So he became the chief operating officer of Barclays Bank. He's like CEO of banks and so on. So the first guy, he says, I got 1 on 18. The next guy says, I got 1 1/4 on 18. And then it was me, I said 1 1/2 on 18. He said, what? So what I would say is, if I'm going to give any advice to people, I'm not going to say anything other than I'd say, be kind, be gracious to the people who have much less privileges than you do, right? So that's what I would tell people. And a lot of these large language models will change the way that you give feedback to people, that you grade assignments, that you set assignments and so on. So if I were teaching right now and I was setting assignments and all, I would have been playing with it a lot more than right now.
Hey everyone, welcome to BITSAA International Presents BITSAA Pulse, which is a series of podcasts where we talk to BITSian entrepreneurs, BITSian startup founders, institutional and academic leaders, and leaders from the corporate. The aim to this whole series is to catch the pulse of those BITSians who have done remarkably well and share inspiring life stories. We're also very thrilled to announce BITS Beacons Distinguished Alumnus Award series, where we talk to BITSians who won Distinguished Alumnus Award. We try to encapsulate the essence of their life, their career, and their unique career paths through the series. Without further ado, I'd like to ask Nishil to introduce our speaker of the series.
We are very honored to have Mr. Madan Pillutla, the Dean of Indian School of Business. Sir has done his undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering from BITS Pilani. Sir has done his postgraduate degrees from XLRI Jamshedpur and from the University of Illinois. He has also done his PhD from the University of British Columbia. Sir has won numerous teaching awards at LBS, where he introduced the popular negotiation selective and directed successful executive educational programs such as the Essentials of Leadership and Negotiation and Influence programs. Sir has also won the BITS Pilani's DA award in 2020.
Professor Pillutla, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to BITS Beacons.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Professor Pillutla, before we start, you were at the Pilani convocation last year, and I distinctly remember you saying this, and I quote, BITSians can laugh at each other and they're very humble. BITSians also have a strong tie with their wing and with their institute. This is the BITSian spirit. BITS has opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Professor Pillutla, now that you look back and connect all these dots through this illustrious journey from BITS to LBS and now to ISB, if you could distill into one single line, what impact did BITS have on your journey?
BITS made me the person that I am today. And just give me a little bit of liberty to go more than a sentence, right?
Sure.
So I went to BITS at a very formative period of my life, as did all of you, right? And what I took away from there, and if I describe myself and the way that I am currently and what I do, while it opened up a lot of different opportunities that were out there, the one thing that the 4 years in Pilani, what it did teach me, it was really to accept myself for who I am, warts and all, accept my failures, and I had a lot of failures when I was in Pilani. So accept my failures, take responsibility for them, not try to blame anybody else, and also appreciate and understand the talents of a lot of different people out there. I met incredibly smart people in Pilani, much smarter than I was. I used to think I was smart till I went to Pilani. So that actually helped me a lot. It's very easy for me now to recognize talent in other people, to understand what they're good at, to appreciate what they bring to the table and so on. And if I think about my journey as I move through the different parts of my life, I would say that this ability to recognize talent in other people, to work with people who are much better than me, to learn from them, that has been characteristic of the way that I've conducted my professional life, and I learned that in Pilani.
I think that's wonderful. I think a lot of people would resonate with what you just said. I resonate with that too. So let's go into the next part. Could you tell us a little about your early education, what your upbringing was like, and how did BITS happen? Was it really by chance, or did you actually aim for BITS Pilani?
So I grew up in Tamil Nadu, and I studied in Ooty. I was in Ooty till I was 13 years old. And then moved to Madras, Chennai, what used to be called Madras in those days. In school, so I mean, you go through school. I was good at school. They really, at that point, I think my parents would have preferred that, my dad in particular would have preferred that I went into medicine. Had no interest in medicine whatsoever. So then the only alternative that seemed available at that time was engineering. And my dad is a graduate of Banaras Hindu University, and Banaras Hindu University, and my name actually reflects the founder of Banaras Hindu University. I could have been named after my grandfather. Instead, I was named after the founder of Banaras Hindu University. So that's what amazing. My name is. I mean, I don't know about the value of that, except it's probably a better name than otherwise I would have had, which was Peda Ramaswamy. I prefer this name to that particular name. But my dad was kind of interested in me studying in the north. He had this saying at that time that when you go to the north, your mind also expands. As the country expands, your mind expands. So I mean, that was there at the back of my head. And I knew about Pilani, so unlike a lot of people in those days, I'm talking about 1984, a lot of people in the south probably didn't know Pilani as much as it is known now, so of course it was always considered a super prestigious school, very, very prestigious, but a lot of people wanted to live around wherever they lived. But I had because of my dad and because of a few people, seniors from my school, Pilani was an attractive option. IIT was never on the cards. I hadn't prepared for IIT, not that I would have gotten had I prepared. I'm not making that claim, but it wasn't on the cards. And so then it was the other kind of engineering colleges that were there. I had a few options because I did well in my 12th standard, but Pilani was the dominant choice. Wanted to go there. Maybe it firmed up. That firmed up around 11th, 12th standard, and then 12th standard. Once I got the marks that I got, Pilani was a natural kind of a choice.
I think that's amazing because what you said, it being you had Pilani on the cards but not IIT, I think that's very unconventional, and you've gone ahead to do a lot of unconventional things in your journey as well. But that's so amazing, the kind of story you have. And I had similar reasons for going to Pilani as well. I am from Hyderabad, went to Pilani. So that's amazing. So now when you go back to your journey at BITS Pilani, right, I'm sure you'll have a lot of experiences that are deeply etched into your memory, especially with your wingies. I've seen you talk about your wingies a lot. They were at your convocation last year, as well. Would you like to share some strong memories from BITS Pilani with us?
Yeah, so my wingies are, a tremendous source of strength. In fact, Saturday and Sunday I was in Bangalore, and I met two of my wingies. I'd gone there. I'd gone there for some other reason, but I'd gone there to meet one of my wingies who's not keeping very well. So the 12 of us that became wingies, and I don't know how it is these days. Okay, so but in those days, when you because you went into Pilani a little earlier than you went into other institutions, there were people who drop out, so who would come in and then who would drop out, who maybe even I. By the way, the first about a week to 10 days when I was in Pilani, I was also thinking that, what am I doing here? I don't know anything here about this place. And my sister at that time, I'd got admission into medical college at that time, and maybe I would have taken it if they'd informed me. But my sister and my dad decided not to tell me that I got admission there, so I stayed in Pilani. So, but there were a lot of people who were dropping out. So my wing slowly people started coming in from other parts of the Gandhi Bhavan. So other parts of people were coming in there into the T wing, as we call it. And the wing itself had people. About 5 of us were from Madras. Okay. There was then we had people. We had one from Assam. We had 3 people from Delhi. We had one from Bangalore, so one from Nagpur. So we just it was an amalgamation of things, which was also in BITS in those days. People tended to stick to people from roughly their own state and stuff. We were all very different people. So what are my kind of experiences? My first I have quite vivid memories of my first year, right? So ragging, which in Pilani was actually a bit of a pleasure, right? Because people thought you met very interesting people. Even the people who ragged you, one of them who ragged me is a year senior to me, is one of my best friends in London.
Oh wow!
So he became the chief operating officer of Barclays Bank. He's like CEO of banks and so on. So he ragged me, So whenever we introduce people, we talk about he talks about the fact that I ragged. Another person that I ragged is now a very senior professor in INSEAD in Fontainebleau. So you make those kind of friendships, right? And I remember this one guy, he caught us, and he was in Bhagirath Bhavan. So he took us, and at that time you're scared. You're thinking, who knows? These guys are bearded guys. Maybe they're into drugs. Everyone talked about drugs in Pilani and stuff. So you go in there. The guy makes us all stand, about 7-8 of us. And he has this unique ability he can move his ear, okay, he can move his nose, he had all these ones. So he said anyone who can move their ear or do any kind of weird movements like this, he'll leave us go. So you can imagine the scene, right? There are like 7-8 of us standing there desperately trying to move our ear and do all kinds of idiotic things. And he was having a laugh, that guy. So ragging itself, so you think back and you look up at this, you make friends during the course of that. And then the first set of exams hit, okay, and I'll tell you, I have crystal clear memories of this. So imagine, someone who's been doing well in school, thinks of himself as smart, and turns up there for this one. So I know my marks, okay, it's etched in my mind. It's embarrassing to tell you those marks that I got out of. So we used to have these 3 tests, 18 marks each, one quiz, 10 marks each for the 3 credit courses. Linear algebra was a 5 credit course, that was a 25 mark one. So math was okay for me, okay. Math I seemed to be okay with. But I still remember inorganic chemistry, and I finished the exam, came out, I said, okay, I didn't do too badly, I didn't do well, but I didn't do too badly, right? So the marks come 1.5 on 18, okay, so that is, I said, what the hell, what is this mark?
You must have been shocked.
Right, I was super shocked because I didn't realize I'd done so badly, right? That is a recurring theme for me throughout in Pilani is I didn't know what the hell I was doing in most of these in these courses. So there was a guy who comes in to rag us. There are 3 of us there, and I won't tell you the names of the other 2, both who also happen to be professors, by the way. It tells you. So he comes in and he says, okay, marks aaye kya? We said, हाँ. And then he says, kitne number aaye? They used to say number, okay, not kitne number aaye. So so the first guy, he says, I got 1 on 18. The next guy says, I got 1.25 on 18. And then it was me, I said 1.5 on 18. He said, what the hell is with you guys?
What was the average? If you
May have been 3 or something, right? May have been the average.
I think 1.5 is reasonable.
That's what we used to pray for, right? So after that, we used to look at the average first. We'd say, okay, what is average? 3, theek hai. Maximum I'll be 3 below average, right? Yes. So that was the way that we would do that. So a lot of my memories are tied up with these experiences, which in those days were seemingly you're getting. So at some part of you, and when my parents, I didn't obviously when my parents saw my grades, they were like shocked. What is going on? But you didn't treat it with that degree of seriousness, okay, and that is what I found astonishing, because we all within a few months we all adjusted to the fact that we are not as good as we thought we were, and that was an important kind of socialization that took place.
And I think even the culture normalizes that.
Correct, so and so another one of my very, very good friends, my Wingy, he got 0. But he'd written beautifully. His handwriting is amazing, right? Really, really nice, beautiful ones. And so the person, I should tell you the story. Someone told us that there was a paper that was leaked, okay? So this guy, he went and he studied these 5 problems. He went to the exam. He didn't know which problem related to what. Okay, so there's some questions, there are some problems. So he just writes answers without any question number against it. And of course the question paper hadn't leaked, and he had written they'd asked something, he'd written something else. So that person wrote 0, 0, 0, 0, overall 0. And then he wrote a note there saying, please come and see me because I don't know what you've answered. Right? So this guy displayed it outside his door. We pasted it outside his door. So you took pride in some of these like rubbish that you were doing in those places. Of course, so a lot of my experiences are tied to these ones which I remember vividly, but also the pranks that you play on people, so you're all in it together, you're all feeling some degree of a lack of reality because you're there in that bubble, you're interacting with one another and so on. So I have a number of these stories, but all my stories are the ones that if you really think about, right, in terms of it relates to these micro interactions that I had with my friends, with a few other people, not just being in outside and so on. So there were all a lot of these kind of experiences, as well as the ones in the classroom where you'd go in there and you'd feel out of depth that in a lot of those different places. Even then it seemed funny, now it seems even funnier. A lot of those.
And I think, as you said, there's a lot of impact on the kind of freedom that we had over there, right? Like we had tremendous amount of freedom. A lot of the experience that you share also come from that sort of freedom, that sort of community engagement. There's nowhere else to go outside in Pilani, so you're all within and you have that sort of and ragging or interaction as we call it. So I think that builds our connection with seniors, juniors and all of them. Just one question here. Mechanical engineering, was it a conscious choice?
No, not at all. I had no clue. When you're filling it out, you fill out something. I put mechanical as my first choice. It turns out, so given where I stood in the priority and all of that, at the end, I was only going to get mechanical engineering. It was my first choice, but I would not have got, for us at that time, computer science was top, and then the second was EEE. I wouldn't have got either one of those, so I would have got mechanical engineering only. It wouldn't have made a difference, I think, to to what I'd done. It would have made a difference in the sense I wouldn't have met the wingies I met. I wouldn't have met this kind of deep friendships. I would have had somebody else probably.
I think one other thing that is remarkable I see now is these lingos haven't changed, right? Teaving still is teaving. So I think a lot of the Pilani has changed, but a lot of it is still the same that it has been always.
Correct. Right. Except it's not tea anymore, right? It's because there are the new wings and all of that.
There's a lot of other new wings as well.
So post BITS you joined XLRI. So what prompted the change of field, and was this always the plan, or was it a result of events during your times at BITS?
Very much a result of the times at BITS, because when you go, as with all of you, right, you go in there, you're going in at a very young age, you have aspirations, you look and you think, wow, I'm going to be a topper, I'm going to end up doing all kinds of things. The reality bites. You look there and while the first 3 years were blissful, so no worry in the world. And at the end of year 3, suddenly it struck me, as it struck a lot of people, that I now need to go out there and do something. What will I do? And the prospect of a job while was there. It was also terrifying to think that hey, that you'll get found out. That in my case, that I know nothing, and if I go into an engineering job, then I'll get found out for not knowing anything. What will happen to me? And I was reasonably, as I said, math was my savior. I was okay, right? I was okay in math. I could also write well and speak reasonably well, all of those things. So a few people who knew about, I didn't know anything about the IIMs, I didn't know anything about Jamnalal Bajaj, those were the big ones at that time, XLRI, I didn't know, I hadn't heard, I knew someone had gone to an IIM, but I didn't know what it meant. So at that time I'd gone for practice school, and there were a bunch of people preparing for CAT and XLRI and all. So you had something called Brilliant Tutorials, and you have Agrawal classes or something. So I also took, along with them, I took some of these classes just for the sake of just thinking that I'll do it, but I don't know whether I'll get into any of those places. And once I got into XLRI, at the time I got into XLRI, my alternative was a job which was as an engineer in one of the Birla companies. So I'd gone through a whole bunch of interviews. We didn't get any jobs. And one job, I think they took pity on me and they gave me that job. So that was my alternative, either going to XLRI or going for this job out there. And I said, why not try this? So quite clearly engineering is not going to cut it, so why not try this and see what it's all about? And without a very clear idea about what a business school was, what an MBA program was, what are the options that were there, and so on. So it was not conscious. It was a realization that that there is a career. This is not a career that I would do, and I could do. Not I would, I could do. So there's something else that I needed to do, which was what I ended up going to XLRI, which turned out to be a very, very good decision in hindsight, right? So at that time I didn't know. It turned out that that thing came a little easier for me. I could in classes, in fact. So a person from Pilani who taught what you people have an introduction to management. We used to have a class called social engineering, which was a management department. So this person, his name was Mukesh Chaturvedi. He was 𝐴𝐚𝐻, we used to call him. So 𝐴𝐚𝐻 then suddenly moved from Pilani to XLRI. And in my first few exams, I was very shocked by the marks I was getting. I was getting very high marks, which came as a big surprise to me in XLRI. And my very good friend Janardhan Menon, civil engineering from Pilani, also came with me there. We were doing very well, okay, he and I, and we found it quite surprising what is going on. So we told this marketing professor, we said, wow man, he's getting very good marks here and all that. How is this the case? I think after that we stopped getting good marks in marketing, but in other subjects we were okay. We still kept continuing to get good marks.
Okay, that's interesting.
So let's now talk about you moving to US and LBS. So to give some context to the audience, so sir actually went to UIUC. He then pursued a PhD from UBC post XLRI, which is actually atypical for someone after an MBA, which I think it's actually a unique path driven by his passion for research. So like, what prompted this shift to pursue a PhD?
So I think, so this passion for research came after, okay. So and I did become, and I'll tell you what, that was also transformational because I met some people there that completely transformed the way that I thought about life itself and what I wanted to do. So after XLRI, and I enjoyed a lot of the subjects in XLRI, so I found it interesting. By the way, even in Pilani, in my 4th year, my electives that I'd done, all my electives were not engineering electives, right?
Management.
So I did, no. I did Heritage of India, comparative Indian literature, modern political concepts, everything. So much so that during interviews, people would ask, what are you doing? Why are you doing all those subjects?
I think a lot of the Pilani folks would resonate with this.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I did all of those subjects. I really enjoyed all those other subjects, as long as it was in. I also like a fool took automotive something, I don't forget the name there. I made my usual D in that, but the other subjects I did them, enjoyed them. So here too I enjoyed, so I really enjoyed all the subjects that were out there. I got, and when you go to XLRI, you get into a very different kind of a job situation, right? So the jobs that you get are much better jobs than what at least I would be able to get in Pilani. So I got a very good job, so I ended up in a very, very good job. But it was always at the back of my mind that, hey, I kind of enjoy this stuff. So maybe I should do something about it. I should, let me do something about it. I didn't know what to do, at that time. I didn't really clearly have an idea. You have to remember this is pre-internet. We are talking about 1990. So you go to USIS, you read about what are the universities doing and so on. You read some journals and you make up your mind that maybe this is something that I would pursue. Very vague idea. It isn't at all clear about what you can possibly do. So I just applied on a lark. I applied. I wrote GMAT. I got a good GMAT score. Plus now I had 2 years of a decent academic record again. So I said, okay, I'll get admission. So I was admitted into the PhD program in the University of Illinois. Okay. At the University of Illinois, I met, first I went into these classes, and I had, I was taught by this person called Greg Oldham, another person called Hussein Liblevici. They are all fantastic researchers, amazing researchers. But in the class, it's just mind-blowing the way that they would describe papers, they would talk about research, and I would just be sitting there thinking, what is this, the quality of these people? And I had been used to the idea that, you take academic jobs as a last resort, right? And then you meet the kind of people I met. And then I also had the fortune of meeting my advisor, what turned out to be my advisor, 𝐾𝐽𝐿. He unfortunately died in 2016. He was only 67 years old. Keith became a very, very dear friend of mine, and one of the most important influences in my life. So Keith, I met Keith. It's another story, and don't need to get into it. But working with Keith, working with these people, and the passion for research came there. In a PhD program, I felt finally, I said, like, this is stuff that I can do. I can do it really well. I'm interested in doing it. I can spend a lot of time doing this one, because it just, every skill set of mine aligned for that, aligned with what was going on. Plus, I was really, really, really interested in that stuff. So, and then Keith, after 2 years that I was at Champaign, Keith moved to British Columbia. So I went with him. And Keith and I became, so he negotiated a deal for me where I didn't need to do any coursework, I didn't need to do anything. So I just took 2 years in UBC, I was 2 years in Illinois, 2 years in UBC, but all my PhD training per se happened at Illinois. They gave me a master's because I was leaving, but otherwise my PhD training happened at Illinois. And the passion came essentially because of the kind of teachers that I had. I mean, these were remarkable teachers, and the advisor, the world's best advisor, and he has many students after me, and every one of them will agree that we were very fortunate to have been taught by someone who's so committed, so passionate, and so helpful in our entire research careers.
And honestly, like, you talking about your research with such passion honestly gives me goosebumps. For me to understand the kind of journey that you've gone through, I think very, very well articulated in terms of it takes us through this whole journey. Thank you. Yeah.
It's like, sir actually worked at LBS for over 24 years. And he won numerous teaching awards, and he even directed courses. So when you look back through those 24 years, did you achieve what you set out to do? How did your goals, your research interest, and your teaching interest evolve over time?
So I don't have plans, okay, so I just want to be clear about that. So in any, I'm very, and this is now, there is a literature about it and talks about it, but I guess that's the way I always was constructed. I live in the present in a lot of things, and I'm very, 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 very present oriented in that sense. So both in my PhD days, and later when I started off as a faculty member and started doing things, there was nothing that I would say no to. If someone says, so in the London, in LBS, there was like a tough teaching assignment. Someone said, will you do it? I said, sure, I have no problem, I'll take it up and I'll do it. You need to spend some time like working with some students doing something, sure, no problem, I'll do it. So it was not, for me, there's no barrier that is there saying, no, I won't do this, I won't do it. I'm just, very happy doing a whole bunch of things. So if you say, did you follow any plan to achieve what your goals was? What I will say is that LBS I love LBS, okay, as an institution. I made my career there. I met some really, really, really good people there. Very fair, very honorable, and without any regard to the fact that so LBS is a very prestigious institution. They can have a lot of snobbery if they want to, and say that you haven't done your PhD from Stanford, or you haven't done your PhD from Harvard, or anything like that. It wasn't like that, okay. So it just was, and you're an Indian, and none of that, So it was very, 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 very open about the fact that anyone who was contributing to it was welcomed with open arms. And once you started contributing in the way that you did, you're all like, it was really good. So I would say that the years that I spent there, I got a lot from that institution, much more than what I gave. I just got a lot. The fact that I grew in my profession during the course of that, in my profession, because some of the things that I did, which I'm proud of, when I look at, I became an editor of one of our important journals where I felt I felt useful, I felt a sense of purpose. I had good PhD students that I could help get them to navigate. They've gone on to take jobs in some of the good schools in the world out there. They've gone and become tenured professors. So all of those things were what LBS gave me as a platform. It gave me. So in that sense, I look back there and I think about the way that I conducted myself. What I did there is I took advantage of all of the opportunities that were afforded to me by that great institution, and in turn because of because there was a match between what I was doing and what the institution also wanted at any point, I also rose in doing things there. The final thing I'll tell you there, right, so in LBS, is it was a joy teaching there. It was a real joy. The students are outstanding. The classes, you go into the class, there is an energy level in the class, people wanting to learn, people, and they're completely the opposite of the kind of student that I was at Pilani, right, where they're very keen on learning, they want to understand what is going on, they're keen on the application. There's a lot that goes on there. It's the same, by the way, in ISB. I came to teach for the very first time in ISB in 2001. I walked away with that buzz, so I said, wow, man, these guys are like deeply interested in the kind of learning that we can give them. So I got again, that was something else that I got in LBS in terms of teaching, in terms of research, in terms of the kind of support that I got there.
That's amazing. And you talking about LBS in terms of the kind of opportunities, it's 20 long years, right? You've spent a lot of your time at LBS, and 2001 is when you actually started teaching at ISB as well as a visiting faculty. That's also a really long time, and you've served as a dean for over 2 years now. So it's really a homecoming for you, because I know this that Mr. Pramath was also asking you for a lot of time for 20 years to come back to India, teach at ISB. So it really is like a homecoming. So how did ISB happen to you? I think I distinctly remember a story where they've asked you in a bar, come be a visiting faculty at the founding batch.
Yeah. So I was, this is so ISB, when ISB was conceptualized, there are very many important people in ISB, right? So one of them is very clearly Rajat Gupta, who conceptualized this. He was at that time he was the head of McKinsey worldwide, and he wanted to create an institution in India which was world class. He wanted to build a research-based institution, as well as, in his mind, the way he thought about it is that India would be a talent factory for the world, and ISB would be very helpful in creating that talent factory. The other is Pramath, who initially came in here. He was a young partner in McKinsey at that time. If you look around in ISB, it's a glorious place that is out there. He was in his early 30s, right? And he came and he was the head of the project, the entire project, and he did this one. So Pramath is someone that I really look up to. He's not that much older than I am, but very wise in the way that he conducts himself and so on. But even before Pramath, so I was a young assistant professor in LBS. And I happened to be teaching this course, negotiation and bargaining. And negotiation and bargaining, if you go to an MBA program, anytime you'll find it's one of the easiest courses to teach, and it's a very popular course. It's a really popular. My advisor was one of the people who started this course, along with another great man called Max Bazerman, who's at Harvard. These are all great people who did all the heavy lifting to create courses like this. Made it easier for the likes of us to come, take the course, and then take it on and go and move it forward. So I taught this negotiation course, and it was a huge success in LBS. It was a very big success. There was a very famous Indian professor by the name Sumantra Ghoshal. And Sumantra Ghoshal unfortunately died very young. He died when he was just 55 years old. So Sumantra was a big name. He's a guru. So there are gurus, management gurus that are out there in the world. So the two of the most famous management gurus are Indian gurus. There's a man by the name C.K. Prahalad, who also passed away a few years ago, and Sumantra Ghoshal was another. So these are big names in the field of management and in the management gurus. So Sumantra was this big shot that was out there. I was sitting in a pub drinking with my two Pilani friends. Janardhan Menon and Anand Narasimhan. So he walks in, Sumantra walks in and comes to my table. He says, "Hey Madan, we're starting the school ISB." By then I knew of what ISB. Of course I knew about ISB. Starting this, will you teach there, and will you teach negotiations? I said, of course I'll teach in ISB. So that's how I came to. I ended up coming and teaching here, teaching this course, the negotiation course. I only taught the first 3 years here, though, and then I started taking on responsibilities in LBS. my children were growing up, they also needed me to be around, so I couldn't take that much time to come here. But I did come back to teach in the inaugural batch of Mohali, and at that time the then dean said he wanted all the people who taught in the first batch here to also teach the first batch in Mohali, which is when I went and I taught in Mohali too. But in the first year that I taught here, I became friends with Pramath, right? And Pramath had this grand ambitions for the school. He painted this vision for the school, which I think, so you look at the school now, it's a product of that vision that was laid out by him, the board then, by Rajat, all of them. So I was always keen at some point and saying I'll come back, and when I come back to India, I'll come and I'll do this. So eventually it happened. Okay, so it happened. My kids went to college, which then said, okay, now I can come here.
And it's a long wait. It's 20 years, and this is actually really. Like
I don't think anyone would have expected me to be the dean 20 years ago. I was an assistant professor. It would have been unlikely. But having over the years, done a few administrative roles, and become a little bit more senior and so on, so that became a little bit more recent that there was a conversation. But a school like this, obviously there are many people who will be claimants to that particular role that are there. So they'll go through their own process. It wasn't as though I was someone in waiting and they were waiting for me. So at the time at any given point in time, if they said please come, they were saying please apply for the role. Okay, or that's all they were saying. And then I applied for the role, and they went through an interview process, and then I got it.
And I think it's also a very strong testament to the fact that ISB is having a lot of integrity. Even when you talked about the whole one school, two campuses, how you look at the whole thing, right? So it's very nice when they wanted the same sort of faculty who taught at Hyderabad to come and teach at Mohali. I think that's wonderful, and I think this whole journey of you coming back here is actually a celebration. So 2 years as the Dean of ISB, and I think you've strongly advocated for the fact that this is also the decade that ISB needs to make an impact, and you work very closely with the government as well, and they've also been very supportive. So how do you look at your 2 years as the Dean of ISB?
I think great learning for me. So you have to remember, I've never worked in India, right? I mean, I worked briefly for a year after I finished XLRI. I worked with ITC, it's a very good company. But I hadn't really spent any amount of time working in India, so understanding the context itself has been a big learning experience. I'm delighted by the learning on a daily basis that I have. India is a vast canvas, right? And there are so many things to do in India. And I think it is your generation's opportunity for you to make a big difference. So there are very positive things that are happening. There are lots of changes, big positive things that are happening out there, and there are many people who are looking forward to the current generation to say that maybe this is finally the time that India will start achieving the potential that it has, right? So it's still at this point in time, while positive things are happening everywhere, we have to remember that it'll require about 10-15 years of sustained effort before we as a country can bring about the kind of change we need to bring in, which means that the large group of people who are currently leading lives that are like very suboptimal lives, that there is something that we can do. So for me, in the 2 years that I've been here, when I said that we want to make an impact, the way I said it is that we will work very closely with the government, and to give you, to just give you we educate people, right? So that is what we do. That's ultimately that's what we are, and we educate people on management, on judgment, on the way you make decisions, and so on, right? And the way that you allocate resources and so on. So the way that I see it is that if ISB can play a very small part in improving the decision-making capability and the resource allocation capability of like government officials, just think about the kind of like power that power to change people's life that a district collector holds in India, right? So a district magistrate. Think about like the kind of power that the chief of police of the assistant superintendent of police in a district. What think of that they have. if we can somehow improve even a few of them, I'm not saying they're doing bad decisions, please, don't get me wrong here, but if we can improve that, so some of that, imagine the kind of impact that we'll be having on India, right? So which is what I opened up, and when I first came and I met all these, what is called the Capacity Building Commission, which is doing tremendously positive work in India, I said, we are here to help you. You tell us what is it that you want us to do, we are here to help you, so, and we became their first knowledge partner. The second thing I did, and we're good, we'll implement it as we go along. I think, the vast majority of people who are coming out of colleges in India, right, when they're coming out, you can always hear these complaints from employers saying they're not employment ready yet, right? So is there a way that we can do something there? Is there? And it is not for us, we can't build 10 other ISBs like this, or 100 other ISBs, they are not enough. But we have to use what technology we currently have to scale up and say that can we make that, can we make available to them courses, material, training and so on, so that they skill up a little. I do believe in the transformative power of management education. I do believe that it can change things quite dramatically, so it might seem very simple to smart people from Pilani, like you guys, it might seem these are very simple things, what are you talking about and so on, but even changing, right, I mean changing people's way in which they manage, whether it's a small enterprise, so managing other people, managing the resources that they have for themselves, that can have a very, very big positive impact on society, and that's what I think we need to make available to a lot of people, and we're trying to do that, so we're creating an online platform, we're creating a whole bunch of online courses, and one of these, in one of these talks that I had, because I'm a Telugu speaking person, the vernacular press periodically it comes and it interviews and it does this, and in one of these kind of interviews, what I did is I talked about this, and as a result of that, there is a wonderful university in Telangana as well as in Andhra. It's called the Rajiv Gandhi University of Knowledge Technologies. So it's an amazing one. It was started under the when it was a combined state, and the then Chief Minister had a vision of educating a lot of people who otherwise would not have had access to this on knowledge technologies like computer science, information, all of this. And he had this idea, and it was brought into effect by this great Carnegie Mellon professor Raj Reddy, who also started something called IIIT in Hyderabad. He started this, and we are talking about 2007, 2008. They did online learning, they did asynchronous online learning, they were doing all of these. So they brought in kids, they gave them these laptops, they had a lot of these courses, and they had coaches teaching them as they moved along. If you go to this university that is out there, 70% of the students are girls.
That's remarkable.
In these, it's fantastic. Over 60% of them is the first generation that has actually gone to college from their schools, because it's an impressive way that they're attempting to do that. Now this one, that Vice Chancellor of that university reached out to me and said, see, you're speaking this big game and all that, what can you do to help us, right? Wow. And so we've offered a few online courses there for them, and we'll do more, so we'll do more for them. And if there are others who are interested and want to come and do this is not about money, right? Correct. This is about reaching out and saying that ISB, thanks to the efforts of great people like, obviously Rajat, Pramat, that whole board that is out there has created this wonderful infrastructure that is out there. And I'm not talking just physical infrastructure, I'm talking intellectual, social, all of this. Now is the time for us to start using this for the betterment of a vast segment of society. So that's part of what we are attempting to do, and what in the 2 years that I've been here, these are a few things that I've been spending a lot of my thinking about attempting to do this, and there are a lot of people in the school who also believe in this in a similar kind of a fashion. So they're very like-minded people, very, very, very talented people who are putting these into motion.
Absolutely, and I think it's a fantastic blend. You talked about take this business acumen to the people, helping them even the smallest of things that you talked about, right? Allocating resources, negotiations, all of these can actually drastically change and bring a paradigm shift in the minds of people.
Absolutely.
And I think there's tremendous amount of work that's happening here at ISB to take this to the masses as well. So that's a wonderful vision. Yeah. So now that this is there, you spoke fondly of LBS, and you say students are similar here as well. So of course there are a lot of similarities between Indian B schools and B schools abroad. But what are some of the stark differences, and what are some other similarities that you find between these schools? Not just LBS and ISB maybe, but broadly your understanding.
So I'll tell you the biggest difference, right? Indian students care about grades, okay, and a lot about grades, and LBS no, okay, or anywhere outside in those places, no, they weren't that worried about the grades that they were making and so on. I think that's one big difference. Okay, so that's one huge difference. That's that's there. The second kind of a difference, so it comes from, I see a lot more engineers in these schools than I would see in any other kind of a B school. There's a lot more, so the kind of the basic degree that is required for people to come in here seems to be engineering. So you'll see a lot more engineers, which means that you will see less diversity in the classroom. And one of the things that I learned, and I need to be to experience this in order for me to like believe this myself, right? So I never believed in this power of like a group sitting together or discussing. In XLRI, for example, I was known for telling people, either you do the assignment or let me do the assignment. Please don't bug me by sitting in a group, us discussing for an hour, 2 hours and all. I don't want to do that, right? But now I believe in the power of this. So what you get in a very diverse classroom is you learn a lot. You learn a lot more. And you get a very, very different kind of a perspective in life. So that's a second stark difference between here and in institutions outside of India. Though ISB is much better when it comes to diversity than a few other institutions, at least when it comes to things like gender diversity, right? So it's a lot better. Where we are not very good, I think, is like socioeconomic diversity. You need to get people. Hopefully, people from RJ, right? So you'll get them. They'll come at some point in time. They'll come into our school and so on. So you need to get some of those things that are going. What is the similarity? Students are just as smart as the students that are there outside there. They're just as smart. They're just as committed to the learning process. They are innovative as hell. They are the number of people who maybe not immediately after they graduate, but maybe 2-3 years after that start businesses. They do all of these like wonderful things that are out there. ISB, each time I meet an ISB alumni, I'm very proud of. I go there. I spent some time in the US. There was an alumni event. I met them there. Or I go to Bangalore, or I go to Delhi. I meet ISB alumni. I think it's just it's fantastic. And the achievements of the ISB alumni are no different from the achievements of the LBS alumni, right? So that kind of similarity is there. So it's just very, very, very smart people, very committed, and want to do a lot of like interesting things that are out there.
And I think it's across the spectrum as well, right? People doing research, people doing startups, people getting into consulting across, right?
Yeah. Very high achievers.
So that's great. So
do you think MBA is required in today's times, and like who should opt for it? Who should pursue it?
I think an MBA is still relevant, okay? But more broadly, I just put it down and I say a business education is still relevant, is what I would say. And whether it's an MBA, which traditionally in the West, an MBA usually is for people with a little bit of experience, 3 or 4 years of experience or 5 years of experience, and then they come into an MBA classroom. Other programs which you go immediately, the kind of program I went to in XLRI, for example, in the rest of the world they call that a Masters in Management, an MIM, okay? And maybe about like 5-7 years ago, I would have told you an MBA where you get a little bit of experience is better than an MIM. I'm not so sure now. Okay, so at this point in time, I would say that even going in for an MIM, so you're doing it there, I think it's very relevant. Right. So who is it for, right? So it's for people, so it's obviously not for the people who are going to go into R&D, it's not for people who are going to go into academia, though I tend into academia. So it's not for those people, but for people who are going to be working in any kind of a job that they're going to be working in. I think there are a whole bunch of skills that they will be picking up that are going to be very relevant. And by skills, I don't mean, so some of these skills are technical skills. You'll pick them up, how to read a balance sheet, right. Those are kind of things that you'll pick up, and you don't really need, you don't need to go through an MBA program. But what an MBA program will teach you, a good MBA or a good 𝐴𝐵𝐚 program, and we have a lot of them in India. Please, it's not just including one of our own. BITS has its own BITS School of Management, right? So BITSAA. So there are lots of these good schools. So what a good MBA program will teach you is it'll teach you like a lot of like critical. So by being exposed to different business problems, you'll develop critical thinking, right? So you'll be thinking and you'll become better at making judgments, because a lot of times you're going to be working in environments where there's a rapid change, there is paucity of data, you'll get something that is going on there, but there is an element of judgment that is required that you need to be making. So you'll be much better, you'll have much more informed way of making judgments that are out there. So what it will teach you is that, so it'll teach you these meta kind of like skills, because it exposes you to a whole variety of disciplines, and those are the ones that will keep you. And I at this point in time, I don't know a better way of learning those skills, okay? And maybe there'll come a time when you can learn those skills better, okay, and in some other way. But in the absence of, at this point, in the absence of what that alternative is, where they can teach you and make you get that, for a vast majority of people, whether they're going to be working in companies, whether they're going to be starting in businesses, I think it still is something that is very, very useful for them to invest in.
Yeah. So sir, as we all know, like both ISB and BITS Pilani are home to hundreds of startups. So like, how do you see Indian business landscape evolving in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship, especially in the context of recent global events and the economic changes? Do you have any advice on dealing with the current ongoing recession, with the hiring freeze and all?
So I mean, see, the most of the audience of this is probably going to be BITS alums and BITS students and all that. Maybe 5 people will watch it, but we'll so what is that? So I mean, they're incredible. You're all incredibly privileged people, right? So what is going to happen in terms of a recession, in terms of what is happening out there in the macro, like poor macroeconomic conditions, has less of a bearing on you than it has on a vast majority of people who do not have the privilege that you have, okay? So that is I think the first thing to realize. So what I would say is, if I'm going to give any advice to people, I'm not going to say anything other than I'd say, be kind, be gracious to the people who have much less privileges than you do, right? So that's what I would tell people, and say, look out for them, just think about them and think about what those changes are. So for example, if you're in any kind of a decision making capacity, okay, so you're there, so you look to see who are the people who are getting pinched the most by this, and see whether there are ways in which you can help them, right? There are ways in which you can buffer some of these problems that are going to be happening to them. Absolutely. Can you buffer them? So you look at and try to understand, so who are the people who are going to be affected? It's not you, okay? It really is not you. It's going to be the other people who have a lot less privileges than you. But you also asked a first question, right? So about Pilani and about ISB being these entrepreneurship doing this. I have tremendous respect for the people who go and start their own businesses, because I look at and I think about how many people, a very small percentage of Indians actually work in formal employment settings, right? Many more businesses need to be created. Many more jobs need to be created. And who are the people who are going to be creating these businesses and these jobs? It's these entrepreneurs, right? So if they are not the people who are going out there and taking the risks that they're taking, failing for the most part, like picking themselves up and then again trying something, it's not going to happen, right? So I'm proud to be associated with institutions that where a lot of entrepreneurs are coming up. I don't know, why, right. I don't know why exactly it's happening in these institutions. I don't know. There is a hypothesis out there that because BITSians don't attend classes, they're starting businesses, but I don't know, in ISB, they still have to attend classes. So I'm very proud of what they're doing. We here are attempting to do our best to create the infrastructure to support them as they're doing that is going on. Right. But really it comes down to the fact that we seem to be attracting a bunch of people who are these kind of risk takers who go out there and who do this. And maybe that's what it is in Pilani too, the kind of people who are coming in there. But institutions like BITS, institutions like ISB just need to try to create the ecosystem where people like this, those with these ideas, those who want to start this with these innovations in mind, we need to try to provide them with a platform to do that.
Absolutely, and I think ISB does attract a lot of risk takers, because I think it's also one of the first few programs that has broken a lot of glass ceilings. Correct. It's one of the few programs with a shorter duration, also with a minimum guaranteed work experience. I think that's true. So I just had one more question here. you love teaching a lot, right? You've won, I think even the first batch at Mohali, you got the teaching award. So you love teaching. How do you find that fine balance between, your responsibilities as a dean and then teaching? I know that you teach organizational behavior even now, but how do you find that?
No, I don't teach.
Oh.
I teach very little.
Okay.
I teach very, very little because my other responsibilities
Right.
take them on. Yeah, I miss it. I miss it a lot, but there are trade-offs every time, right? So when you choose, you can't have everything. You can't. So I mean, in this time, if I look at and I think what is the best use of my skill sets for ISB, it probably is me doing what I'm doing. Okay,
Correct.
so that even now, what gives me the greatest utility will be in a classroom. So I spend about 10 days in a classroom. So I go there and I teach, but it's primarily with exec education, right? So if it's with our own students, if I need to do that, then there's a lot more that I need to spend because there are exams that I need to set, there are grades that we need to give, all of that, right? So we need to do a whole bunch of those things, which in exec education you don't need to do. People come in, you teach them, then you leave. There is no follow-up by way of assignments and exams and other things that are out there. So I do that, but I do very little teaching. I do very little teaching.
Understood. So now I think we'll switch gears. We'll move to the last and final segment. For the final few minutes, we'll do a quick round of rapid fire. So it's more for off the cuff insights about your preferences, experiences, and maybe a few surprises along the way as well. So let's just jump right in.
So the first question is, if you could have a dinner party with 3 business figures, dead or alive, who would they be and what discussion you would have with them?
So one of them I saw from a distance when I was in XLRI, and I mean I really loved this person. He was very old by then. Would be JRD Tata. Okay, I think he's a fabulous human being. Forget just as a businessman. I mean, the man was amazing, right? So something that was there. Another person that I would think of, right, if I look back at the people who I think are amazing in the way that they did a whole lot of things, would be Thomas Edison. So Thomas Edison, we know as this inventor, right? So but he used his inventions and he built GE, one of the most famous companies, one of the biggest companies in the world. So he would be another person because I mean, he was obviously a genius of sorts. He was an inventor and a highly respected inventor, but at the same time he also had the ability to build a business. So that kind of a polymath is someone that I would look at. And the final person, and because I don't know anything about it other than what I would read in the press or anything, would be Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs would be for the simple reason that he built a business, but also, I mean, just the aesthetics of the things that he did, right? You think about the first computer that he had. The man cared a lot about even the kind of fonts that get used. Right. He cared a lot about the beauty of that machine, and I mean the phones, the iPhones or anything. You just look at these. These are all at some point in time. This could have been just pure utilitarian things out there, right? It's just clunky. And I remember I first bought a Lenovo machine, right? So this is an IBM machine that is out there. My friend Punya, who's also a Pilani guy, by the way, he bought at that time a MacBook, and I was kicking myself. Of course, I didn't have that kind of money, and he had a card that allowed him to buy. This was in Illinois. But the difference in the machines that are out there. So the beauty, for the sheer fact that he built a business, but at the same time he would never lost sight of the beauty of the product that he was building there. These would be people that I would very much. I mean, what are the questions I would ask? I won't. I mean, they would talk to each other and I would listen, is what I would guess. But JRD, I didn't say, right? So if I look at JRD was an amazing human being, right, by all accounts. Absolutely. He was an amazing human being. And people in, if you go, I mean, I've been in XLRI for 2 years. People in Jamshedpur, they worshipped the man. The man was was just lovely in every aspect of the way that he conducted his life. And the Tata Group still bears that stamp, right? They are hugely respected in the way that they do things, and it all comes down to the kind of person.
Wonderful. Yeah. So if you don't mind sharing, we discussed your grades at BITS. So would you mind sharing the CGPA here?
So I might be overstating it a little because I'm trying to remember what I got. I think it was 6.83, okay, is what I think it is. Could have been 6.86, but we'll go with 6.83, you know, might as well reduce it to its lowest form. And yeah, that was my GPA.
It's amazing that you remember it.
Yeah.
I remember because I made on a 8-point scale in XLRI, I had higher than what I got on a 10-point scale in Pilani.
Oh.
So that's why I remember this quite well as a grade. I remember it quite well.
Absolutely.
So what is your guilty pleasure?
It's not guilty. I mean, I enjoy it thoroughly. You know, so I watch all kinds of movies, and I am probably in my wing. There is a very clear rating of movies, right? There are good movies. There are movies. There are bad movies, and there are movies that Madan also may not watch. You know? May not. Please remember the operative term is may not, because I will watch any rubbish.
Even Telugu.
What do you mean even Telugu, man? The Telugu, of course I will watch. So I watch Telugu. I watch Telugu. I watch Tamil. I can speak Tamil because I grew up in Tamil Nadu, right? Hindi, of course. I'm not that big on English movies and stuff. I'm like these movies I watch, and yeah, I have a lot of tolerance for very bad movies. My family finds it irritating, actually. In a lot of situations.
So, what was your favorite hangout spot at BITS, if you remember?
Bank canteen. You guys didn't have that. Yeah. So you know where the 𝐼𝐸𝐼 Bank is?
Right.
Okay, behind the 𝐼𝐸𝐼 Bank there was bank canteen. And then when I went last time, I saw this bank canteen is no longer there, you know. So there used to be all these guys. So all the guys, like, so you know, you have this distinction, cat versus non-cat, right? You didn't have that? No. Okay, the sophisticated people were called cats. That was casual American teenagers, okay, cats, okay, and then the non-cats. The cats were all the Skylab guys, okay, we used to go to Skylab, and the non-cat people, we were all these BC. So BITS bank canteen is behind the, where Rana Pratap Bhavan is, opposite that is 𝐼𝐸𝐼 Bank, behind 𝐼𝐸𝐼 Bank is bank canteen, so that's where.
The 𝐼𝐸𝐼 Bank is still there, there's no bank canteen.
There's no bank canteen, so that was my favorite hangout spot, especially because we didn't go to any classes, right, so we were hanging out there quite a lot.
So if you weren't in academia, what alternative career would you have preferred?
I don't know, you know, so I've often thought about this. What would I have possibly done? Maybe a lawyer, you know, again, these are things that I'm kind of interested in. I can maybe a lawyer, possibly, you know, so that's one alternative career that I could think of, but nothing more extravagant than that, you know. So it's not as a keen sportsman or good at any of those things, so that is highly unlikely. I can barely sing, to hold a tune or act or any of those things, so none of those creative ones were there. So maybe lawyer is probably the, it's not that far from academe, so I guess that's what I would have been doing, maybe.
So in your professional and personal capacity, do you use ChatGPT, and if you do, how much?
I use very little of it, and I mean, when it first came out, I was doing all kinds of things with it, but slowly, you know, I don't use it as much. I think that there's a tremendous potential for it, right? So even in the way we teach and so on. So I think a lot of these large language models will change the way that you give feedback to people, that you grade assignments, that you set assignments and so on. So if I were teaching right now and I was setting assignments and all, I would have been playing with it a lot more than right now, because I've just set up a little task force in ISB asking them to take a look at these questions, right? So how are we going to change the way that we're going to be thinking about using them in our assignments and so on.
So let's say you were to go back to Pilani and you had time to take only one meal. What would that be?
One meal?
Yeah, just one meal.
One meal.
So it would be a paneer Maggi in Blue Moon.
Paneer Maggi.
Oh wow, paneer Maggi in Blue Moon. That's nice.
I did, by the way, when I came there for the convocation last year. I went there and I had paneer Maggi.
Wow. Oh, nice.
That's nice. So what's your favorite Hyderabadi dish or dessert?
So Hyderabadi. Probably dish, because that desserts that are Hyderabadi desserts, like that double ka meetha and all. I'm not that keen on.
I was anticipating that as the answer.
No, I'm not that very keen. I'm not too keen on that. But I like the bagara bengan. I like a lot.
I love it.
I think it's an outstanding dish. Even the mirch ka salan, right? So I'm primarily vegetarian, you know. So all through, before I went to the US, I only ate. I was vegetarian, but now I eat meats of different kinds. Most people probably would have said biryani, but for me, no.
Yeah, I was anticipating either paradise or double ka meetha. That's nice. Just one last question. Can you remember who the last BITSIAN was you met before us today, or the last BITSIAN you met?
I met my wingis yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So yesterday I met two of my wingis.
That's amazing. I think this brings us to the end of the rapid fire question round. We unfortunately don't have a Karan Johar gift hamper to give, but thank you so much, sir. I think the rapid fire answers were excellent. We had a lot of fun. So he has one.
Just one last question. It's not exactly a question. It's more of an advice from your side. Like, if you had one piece of advice for your own 25-year-old self, what would that be?
So I'll take a little creative liberty and change it to my 21-year-old self.
Absolutely.
Okay, because by 25 life was okay again, right? So at 21, when I was entering my like at a time where I had to make a decision, right? This is we're talking about 1988, and I was really thinking that my life as I know it was going to be I was going to be unemployed. I was not going to everyone. I would look around and I'd be a general kind of a failure in life because my grades were bad. Grades being bad was not the issue, right? I was very clear that I knew no engineering, and mechanical engineering in particular, no engineering. So I'd spent a few of those months quite upset and look back and thinking there's no way out of this little maze that I've got myself into. So and that was a very brief period in my life, if I look at this, of being unhappy and being worried about it. So the only advice I would give is that life has a way of working itself out, you know, don't worry about it. This is, as long as you have like some kind of skills, and as long as you're a decent enough human being interacting with other people, you'll not have much of a problem, is the advice that I look back and I'll give, because that was a worrying period at that point. Given where I was and in what situation I was, and we're talking about 1988, it is pre-liberalization India. You're looking and saying, wow man, I have to write these exams. Will HAL give me a job? Will HMT give me a job? And all those other kind of things that you're thinking about at that time. So I would tell a lot of young people that, you know, don't worry about it. And I say this to a lot of people who don't get what they want. I didn't get into IIT. Life as I know is over. I didn't get into IIM. Life as I know it is over. You know, I say, it's okay. You know, there are always many doors that will open up for you at any point in time. Right? So that's what I would say. But here is what I will give some advice. So of the people that I've met and so on, right? We should always have this nostalgia. You know, we should always be, that is great, that is all fantastic and stuff like that. But ultimately, who you are as a person is a daily kind of a decision. You know, so I was a great person in college is not going to cut it. Okay, I was like this topper there is not going to cut it. It's, you know, every day you need to be thinking about who you are. I mean, you don't need to consciously, but you need to be working towards doing that and trying to be something you are. So I look back and I think that, you know, and this might sound a little vague, but the number of times I have heard in India where people say, I went to X college, and they are 50 years old, you know, and say like, what difference does it make? Unless you want to relate to somebody. But if you want to signal that I went to X college, so therefore I'm great, right? And that is something that people need to avoid and say, yes, you've done great things, but what have you done today? You know, what are the things that you're doing today is what I would say. I would give that to people. This is something that people need to think about quite a lot.
I think honestly that's really ennobling and insightful in terms of us being able to achieve and strive for better things. And even like I because it's really important for me, the conversation that we're having also, because you're also a chief guest at my own convocation. So I remember a lot of the advice you gave then also really struck a chord with me.
I'm sorry. I promised myself if I were a chief guest, I will never give advice, but that's the form. So I fell for for that and gave advice.
No, they were really helpful.
Thank you. That's kind of you to say.
So I think that brings us to the end. Professor Madan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I think a lot of the journey that you ran us through, they were your own personal journeys, and I think all of our audience, including both of us, are going to benefit tremendously from what you shared. And most importantly, how strongly you spoke of your passion. I think it's also a testament to where you are today. So thank you so much for taking out this time for us. I'm sure all of the BITS alum and students are very, very excited that this conversation has happened. Thank you so